Welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you're looking to estimate the size of your monetizing audience, it's good to not just look at daily monetizers. You want to know what is the full breadth of my monetizing audience, and you're aware that your customers aren't going to be purchasing from you every single day in, day out. Instead, they're going to have some sort of rhythm. So in order to reflect this, what we're going to do today is recreate the analysis behind me, which shows you a count of daily, weekly, and monthly monetizers for your business. So let's get to it. Here we are in MySQL. What we're going to do is first use a date table. It's a very useful table if you want to aggregate information between dates in a sort of time series. Here's our table in the column of dates right here. And then our second table is going to be a table of revenue transactions. And here's a sample of that second table right here. Okay, so what we want to do is join table 1 to table 2. So let's do that now. We're going to call this date table dates and do a left join over to this revenue transaction table, and we will call it rev. And we'll do it on the revenue purchase date has to be less than or equal to the dates date, and the revenue purchase date has to be greater than 30 days before the date in the date column. And I will explain that in a second. So I'm going to go back to our date table so I can fully explain this join to you. Okay, here are some sample dates. So we want the revenue transaction date or the revenue purchase date to be less than or equal to each one of these dates, right? And we added the equal to part so that we can count the number of transactions on this actual day so that we can get daily monetizers. Now you notice this second part of the join here, where the revenue transaction date or the purchase date has to be greater than 30 days prior to this date. And the reason why is because for each one of these dates, we want to count the number of people that monetize on this date for daily monetizers, which is taken care of by this part of the join here. And then what we also want to do is we want to count the number of monetizers on that date and on the previous 6 dates for a trailing 7 so that we can get weekly monetizers. And then the broadest, sort of largest time interval that we're trying to get is a count of monetizers over the last 30 days. So that's what this second part of the join statement represents, is kind of putting a cap on how far back we go historically when we return data from this join. So what it's saying is the revenue purchase date has to be less than or equal to this value right here. The equal to statement ensures that we can get daily monetizers. And then we're going back 29, basically 30 date records from this date. and that allows us to get trailing 7 and trailing 30, which is what we want. Okay, great. So now what we are going to do is do some aggregations within a case statement. So we want these dates from table 1, and then what we want to do is add a case statement and say case when this revenue purchase date is equal to this date. So remember, we're bringing back revenue purchase dates that are less than or equal to this date. Whenever it's equal to this date, then that's going to represent our daily monetizers. So we'll do then okay, great. So let's go through this. So when the purchase date or revenue transaction date from table 2, which is being brought across, is equal to this date value here, then count the number of monetizing customers from table 2. Else null. So if you do a count distinct on null, you get 0. There we go. Okay. And probably the hardest part of this, but not that hard, don't get intimidated, is trailing 7. So we'll say case when this purchase date is greater than date add and I will explain this. So we will call this weekly monetizers. Okay. So we know we are already bringing across purchase dates that are less than or equal to this date right here. But we need to put some sort of historical cap on this. The one that we have now is for last 30 days. That's too much data if we want to do a trailing 7 or a count of monetizers or weekly monetizers. So we have to add another historical cap so that we can stop the data during this aggregation. So what we're doing here is saying, hey, count the number of monetizers that monetize on this date and on the previous 6 dates for a trailing 7, which will represent weekly monetizers. So that's what this is right here. Cool. And then you may think that we would copy the same logic here, but we don't have to. And this is to do the monthly monetizers. So all we simply need to do for monthly monetizers is that. And the reason why is because this historical cap already exists in our join, so we're taken care of. We don't need to do anything more. So that's awesome. So we will do a group by, and then here's the other thing we need to do. We need to make sure that we have enough trailing data. So a lot of this logic, especially in the join, it's saying go back 30 dates. Well, we need to make sure that 30 dates historically exist. So in order to ensure this, we can add some logic in a having statement. So we'll say having This is saying having / make sure there are 30 distinct and different trailing dates, ensuring that we have a full trailing 30 days of data to support all of our metrics. So very important. Because we don't have infinite data, we don't have infinite historical or leading data, so be sensitive to that. Okay, we are ready to run this query. We are good to go. Fantastic, here's our data. We have daily monetizers, we have weekly monetizers, and monthly monetizers. So remember, this is trailing or lagging data, so people that purchased on this date, trailing 7, so this date and the previous 6 dates, and then monthly monetizers, so that'll be this date and then the previous 29 dates. Okay, let's go over to Excel. So what we're going to do now is, let's just pick the last few months. Go July 2024 forward. We'll make a dual axes chart. Put daily monetizers on one side and then weekly and monthly monetizers on the other side. Let me build this chart. Okay, so we are finished, and I think the end result is pretty cool, because in most businesses you'll get a count of monetizers per day, and in this instance it's about 15 to 25 customers, but it doesn't give you the additional breadth or scope of knowing that, hey, over a weekly basis we have about 175 unique customers, and over a monthly basis we have about 475. That really has the potential to change your strategy, and because of that, I think is super insightful. Anyway, if you like this content, please continue to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for joining today's tutorial.